Hi, I'm Advita Patel, and I'm the founder of CommsRebel. We help organizations build confident workplaces through inclusive and effective internal communications so people can be their best selves.
Advita, you've written this really interesting book, which I'm in the process of reading. What led you to want to write a book about confidence?
Oh, such a great question, Amanda. And I've had an interest in confidence probably for the last 8 to 10 years. I've always suffered, I would say, from imposter syndrome. I've always felt a little bit like I didn't quite belong in the workplace. I used to mask who I was. I used to call myself the communications chameleon in the workplace because I could adjust and adapt my personality depending on who I needed to influence and what type of impact I wanted to have. I was told by leaders that supported me about going to do this training course and going to do this training course, and you need to get a bit more gravitas here and you need to behave a little bit like that. And in doing all of that, I kind of lost a sense of my identity and who I was as an individual. And I started to mimic other people's behavior. And when you start doing that, you just don't know who you are anymore. Then in 2018, it all came to head where I had a bit of an incident at work and something happened and it really knocked my confidence to the extent where I realized actually maybe I don't belong in the world of PR and comms, and maybe I need to go and do something else. And I remember looking through like different different university prospectus to see what other course I could do because I wanted a change in career because I just didn't feel like I belonged. And I felt like everything I did over the last 15 years was just made up and I was a fraud and I really didn't deserve the opportunities that were given to me. And I remember getting this new job and it was a really good job, really interesting. And every Monday, I used to ring a friend on my way to this new job because it's miles away. It took me about an hour and a half to get there. So every Monday, I rang a friend. And on this one particular Monday, I rang this friend. And I was basically just ranting and raving at her about how unfair everything was and how miserable I was and how I just didn't really feel myself anymore. And she just basically went really quiet. And I thought I lost her. You know that black spot on the M62? There's a little bit of a
Yeah.
black spot. You'll know because it's near between Warrington and Manchester. Um, I thought I lost her. So she goes, I went to her, sorry, hello, are you there still? Are you still there? And she's like, yeah, I'm still here. I'm just thinking about what you're going to do about everything you just said to me. I went, what do you mean? She goes, well, you've just been complaining to me for the last like half an hour. Like, what are you going to do? And I thought, because she's had a really bad day. What's going on here? It's just literally 9 o'clock in the morning. Anyway, when I got to the car park, I used to just sit in that car park building up, like you do in the car, like, oh,
Mm.
got to go in and all that stuff. But this time I had a bit of an epiphany and I was like, she's right. Like, how long can I continue complaining about my life and how I feel? Because the only person that can change how I feel is me. Now, of course, we're going to face an element of adversity and challenges, and we can't control what other people say to us at all, but we can definitely control how we react and how we behave and what we think about ourselves. So that evening, I went home and I spent so many hours researching imposter syndrome, inner critic, confidence, self-esteem, self-worth, value. And I just became a bit obsessed. And I started to realize that a lot of the behaviors we see at work through leaders and other folks is because there's some element of insecurity in them. And I mean
Mm.
toxic behaviors.
Yeah.
And I figured out in all the work I did, and when I started CommsRebel in 2020, and I started to work in culture shift and culture change and inclusion, that some of the leaders' behaviors was very much down to the fact that they were masking themselves and trying to hide this feeling they had about feeling like an imposter. And most of our behaviors are almost kind of we're kind of mimicking our leaders' behaviors, right? So if our leader's been really terrible towards us, we'll feel that a lot. But when a leader's really inclusive and supportive and confident in who they are, we become our best selves, right? And we kind of help other people do the same thing. So that's why I always say that confidence is contagious. So that's why the book came from that. I wanted other people to realize actually it's not there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. And I mean, it's interesting because people who don't know you, who see what you do, would be really surprised to hear about you've had confidence kind of issues or,
Oh,
you know, and things like that? Because I think, you know, people, there's an assumption that when they see people like yourself doing what you do, that, oh, they've got everything sorted.
oh, I people are so shocked. Those who knew me pre 2018 and knew me well know the shift I've had in how
Mm.
I now believe in myself. I just didn't believe in myself pre 2018. I wasn't like a wallflower by any
Mm.
stretch of the imagination. I don't think when you work in communications and you work in a fast-paced environment and you work in a senior role, you do have to have an element of confidence in how you approach certain situations because you need your leaders to trust you,
Mm.
right? So I was never really a wallflower, but I definitely didn't have this belief in who I was and what I could contribute. I always waited for permission and validation. And over the last few years, I've worked really hard to make sure that I knew who I was and what I stand for and my values as well.
Mm.
And without having to pretend I'm somebody else to be successful.
Yeah. So, in terms of, I mean, in the book kind of touches on sort of high pressure environments, and you've mentioned it obviously in relation to kind of comms world being really busy. How important is confidence in that sort of environment?
Incredibly important, especially in crisis. When you're facing a crisis situation in the workplace, you need to be confident in the solutions and the support that you're giving to people around you. You need to be also vulnerable enough to admit that you may not know the answer so you can get the right expertise around you. You need to have the right level of boldness to be able to make those decisions. You've got to have integrity, right? When you're doing all of this, you've got to make sure that your energy is maintained so you're not exhausted, so you're not making decisions on based on exhaustion and mental depletion. There's so much around confidence and especially crisis around that. And the only way you can deal with that well is when you know yourself well.
Mm.
Like, who are you and how do you react in a crisis? What do you need to do around you to make sure that you can lead and influence in the right way, depending on the role that you play? The catastrophic crises that have happened across the globe, as you will know, Amanda, is when people are either over egos and haven't brought in the right expertise,
Yeah.
when they panic and start shooting out all sorts of nonsense because they just don't know what to do, or when they retreat and they haven't dealt with it properly. Confidence will help you understand and recognize actually what are my gaps, where are my strengths, and who do I need around me to be able to make these decisions well. Which is why in the book I do talk about a DISC, which is a communication preference. I talk about cultural intelligence,
Mm.
like because the cultural around you will depend on the decisions that you make. Understanding that about yourself and your gaps and how you can plug them will help build more resilience in how you approach crisis and also give people confidence in your approach.
Yeah, I think the cultural intelligence piece is often overlooked in crisis, and we've had
Yeah.
this conversation offline many a times, I'm sure. Now, and I think it's such a big factor. So you've got seven kind of principles, isn't it? So kind of
Seven habits.
seven habits. I say
Yeah.
so corrected me. Seven habits, and that's each letter spells out believe,
Yeah.
which works out really well.
Yeah.
Just taking from that, sort of what would your top tips be? Is it is it those seven habits? What are your top tips for people?
The number one tip I would say is give yourself time to understand who you are,
Mm.
not what other people think you are, not what your line manager, your leaders, your school teachers, your parents, your guardians. You need to spend time in uncovering and discovering who you are. And that's going to take a little bit of effort. And that's going to take a little bit of unpicking as well and unconditioning. We live in a world where we have been conditioned to think a certain way because of the behaviors around us, right? We get told, don't you, to be a good, solid, strong leader, you need to be loud and extrovert and have this kind of ego so people listen to you. That isn't true. That isn't true. And I always say to folks who are more reflective and more steady that you can be, if not just as good, if not better leader than some of those louder voices. For you to understand who you truly are and what you truly stand for, you need to do a bit of inner work. Because once you've done that inner work, there really isn't anything anyone can say to you that will knock you off your pathway. Like people can say to me, Oh, Advita, I think that you can be you talk a bit quickly. Or Advita, I don't think you have as much gravitas as you should have. And I'm like, I'm good with that. Like I know where
Mm.
my strengths are and I know where my learnings and opportunities are. I never call them
Yeah.
weaknesses, right? I always call them opportunities and learnings are. And I'm okay with that. And I also, the other tip I'll say is who is your learning circle? And I talk about the learning circle in the book because we spend a lot of our time, especially when our confidence is a bit shaky, taking on advice and listening to people. And that's important. I'm not saying it is, especially people who you are inspired by or you really respect in the work they're doing. But I would ask you to be cautious about how many voices you're listening to and who is in your listening circle, because sometimes it can take you from one way to another way. And to be a good leader in an organization, you need to understand who your mentors, who are your supporters, who are the ones who are going to tell you truth, to your face, not just pacify you because they don't like to have difficult conversations. That's a second tip I'll share is who's your learning circle, who are your personal board of advisors.
Mm. That's brilliant. I'm thinking back to kind of people who I would have said were good leaders, and interestingly, they're not the ones who were the loudest in the room
Yeah.
because they had the quiet air of authority, I suppose,
Yes.
which
Yes.
actually is in lots of respects probably a stronger
Yeah.
position than just
Oh,
being loud.
100%. The ones who are reflective, the ones who are more observant, the ones who are listening, properly listening, generally make the better leaders because they are focused, they are reflective, they are responding to an answer rather than waiting to
Mm.
respond. They're the ones who, in my opinion and in my experience and in the research I've done, because the book is based on research, they tend to be the more influential leader over the ones who are more dominant, louder,
Yeah.
and even in terms of like assertiveness, like you can still be assertive when you are more reflective, but sometimes the loud voices can overshadow the more reflective voices who have more of a deeper thought process in especially in crisis or
Mm.
especially when you're looking for innovative solutions. But both add value, by the way. So even if you are the more extroverted leader, I'm not saying that's a bad leadership, but you do have to be a bit mindful about your listening. And I sit in that camp, by the way. I have to be very careful about not over dominating conversations and really listen to what's going on around me rather than
Mm.
assuming that everyone is with me or is caught up with me. And that's something that you just have to learn. And it's not about being ashamed of it, but it's just being aware of it.
Yeah, it goes back to that what you were saying about owning who you are, which is probably one of the most important things, isn't it? And sadly, we don't tend to do it until we get much, much older,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
finally you sort of get to be comfortable with who you are.
And we don't do it very well in PR and comms.
Mm.
So as an industry, we're just not very good at asserting ourselves in situations where we can be seen as the expert. I
Yeah.
feel that often when I talk to PR and comms folks, they wait often for that permission to have that seat around that table or that permission to
Mm.
contribute and it's dependent. It's not,
Yeah.
I'm generalizing here a little bit, obviously, but we're working in an industry that's always kind of waiting to be invited. We're
Mm.
always kind of waiting for someone to say to us, come on, can you give me some advice? Whereas I think if we took a little bit more ownership and accountability for the contributions we're making, and that is down to our confidence and self-esteem, we can make a massive difference in the organizations and probably help them avoid some of these catastrophic disasters that some of them face
Yeah.
and reputation damage. And those PR folks who understand it and get it thrive and not only thrive in themselves, but help other people
Mm.
around them also thrive and be better at the work they're doing.
So I suppose one thing we should add as well is what the BEL, I can't spell believe now, say what they each stand
So
for.
it's boldness, it's empathy, it's learning, it's integrity, it's empowerment, it's vulnerability, and it's energy. They're the
Okay.
7 habits that all confident leaders should be aware of and be practicing on a daily basis. And you'll dial up and dial down depending on the environment, depending on the situation, depending on what's needed. But we should be aware of all 7 habits and where we sit on those 7 habits. And there's like a free quiz, which I'll send you, Amanda, that folks can do to kind of understand where they sit on the 7 habits as well. Because you can't learn all 7 together because you'll just overwhelm yourself, but find the one where you need to kind of maybe enhance and then work backwards from there. And then finally, one of the things I want everyone who's listening to remember is that you can't be everyone's cup of tea, otherwise you will be a mug. And this work is not an overnight fix. It will take some time. There will be some challenges. You will feel that, oh my goodness, what is going on here? I don't quite feel myself. But take it one habit at a time, take it one small step at a time, speak to people around you. If you've got any questions about confidence, about workplace culture, message me. Like, I don't want anyone to feel that they're alone in this work, because you can't achieve a lot when you're doing it alone. But when you work together, it makes a massive difference. So do think about, your community and the people around you as well.